Hey guys, today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. Even in the most loving and tight-knit families, disagreements, misunderstandings, and conflicts can arise. Yet it's often within the family that people seek comfort, support, and validation. But the closer the bonds, the more dangerous and unforgiving things can become. Of course, enemies don't appear out of nowhere. Anger and resentment can quietly simmer for years. But when all those negative emotions finally explode, the results can be truly devastating. The story of a young woman named Anjana Lama Mahat is both disturbing and deeply unsettling in its intensity. The crime took place inside the walls of a luxurious home owned by a well-respected family. Everyone involved hoped to sweep the matter under the rug, allegedly going so far as to offer bribes to law enforcement. What makes this case even more shocking is that the Mahat family had always been seen as a picture of success and harmony. They never aired their grievances in public, and that's exactly why what happened took everyone by surprise. Anjana Lama was born on August 26, 1995, in the small industrial town of Hetauda, located in the southern central region of Nepal. She was the eldest in a large family with limited financial means. Growing up, she helped raise her 3 younger sisters and her brother, taking on responsibilities well beyond her years. She also supported her mother with household chores, cleaning, doing laundry, and learning to cook at an early age. From a young age, Anjana had a special charm that made her stand out. Her kind and caring nature, combined with a warm personality, drew people in. She was friendly, always willing to lend a hand, and had a natural ability to connect with others, whether classmates, neighbors, or strangers. Academically, Anjana was a solid student. While not at the top of her class, her teachers consistently noted her intelligence, determination, and mature attitude toward her studies. Everyone believed she had a bright future ahead. With her striking looks and slim, athletic figure, Anjana began attracting attention during her teen years. But it wasn't just her appearance that made her popular. She had a fun, lighthearted personality and could easily become the life of any social gathering. She avoided confrontation and always tried to resolve disagreements peacefully. Anjana had a real talent for drawing and dreamed of becoming an artist, fashion designer, or working in the beauty industry. She had all the potential to succeed, but she couldn't rely on financial support or connections from her family. Everything she achieved would have to come from her own hard work. While still in school, she met a young man named Prajwal Mahat, who was a year older. He came from a high-status Chetri family, while Anjana's background was from the Tamang ethnic group, historically of Mongolian descent. His parents, Pushpa and Kamal Bahadur, were wealthy, well-known, and highly respected in the community. His older brother, Ujwal, was a successful sound producer and had even worked on promoting one of Nepal's most famous songs, Suna Saili. From the start, there was a strong mutual attraction between Anjana and Prajwal. They became close friends and started spending more and more time together. They shared many interests, hobbies, and ambitions. Still, they initially kept their distance, knowing that their different backgrounds made any relationship between them socially unacceptable. But as time passed, their bond deepened into something much more than friendship. They couldn't imagine being apart and made a promise to stay together, no matter what, even if it meant going against deeply rooted traditions. Naturally, when their relationship came to light, both families strongly opposed it and forbade them from seeing each other. Ujwal, Prajwal's older brother, was the only one willing to support the couple. Touched by their story and believing in the sincerity of their feelings, he agreed to help. Together, they came up with a plan to leave quietly and arranged a private wedding. Ujwal even paid for the ceremony out of his own pocket. His intentions were noble, but once news of the marriage broke, it sparked a serious family scandal. The couple tied the knot in late 2016. Anjana was 21 years old at the time, and her new husband had just turned 22. For the first few months, the newlyweds had to move from one low-cost rental apartment to another. Without stable jobs or reliable income, they relied heavily on Ujwal's financial help. Prajwal was doing his best to find employment, but the only opportunities he could secure were short-term and low-paying gigs. In early February 2017, Prajwal received a call from his mother, Pushpa. They talked for several hours. She tried to convince her younger son to come back home, but he made it clear he wouldn't go anywhere without his wife. Eventually, it was agreed that both he and Anjana would move into the Mahat family home, a large estate located in the bustling city of Lalitpur. Prajwal was the youngest child in the family. His two older sisters were already married and had moved in with their husbands. At the Mahat residence, the household now included his parents, his brother Ujwal, Ujwal's wife Aishwarya, and their son, Santosh. Anjana's first few months in her new home were far from welcoming. She constantly felt out of place and sensed an unspoken hostility from almost everyone around her. She had no idea how to earn the approval of her in-laws, and it was clear she wasn't fully accepted. Things were made even more difficult by the fact that she had no one to confide in. Her own parents were still upset with her, and they weren't even speaking over the phone. During a major holiday, when the Mahat home filled with extended family, longtime friends, and business associates of Kamal Bahadur, Anjana wasn't even allowed to come out of her room. It was painfully obvious that the family was ashamed to introduce her to their guests due to her less prestigious background. The slight was devastating, and she spent the entire evening alone, crying behind closed doors. Despite everything, Anjana tried her best to be kind and respectful. She never raised her voice, never argued, and did all she could to fit in. Soon after they settled in, the family patriarch arranged a job for Prajwal at one of the major companies he worked with. It was a way of giving his son some independence, while still keeping him under close watch. Prajwal quickly began to succeed, earning respect, climbing the corporate ladder, and bringing in a decent income. The Mahat household ran on strict rules that applied to everyone, even with house staff and domestic help. Every family member had specific responsibilities. Disrupting the order was not acceptable. Each morning, the adults left for work, and the kids went off to school. Only Anjana stayed behind. She had yet to find a job, and her in-laws didn't seem in any hurry to assist her in getting one. In May 2017, Anjana told her husband that she was finally ready to chase a dream she had carried with her for years, opening a small beauty salon in their neighborhood. She had already found a location for lease, researched the details, assessed the market demand for the services she wanted to offer, and even put together a business plan. But there was one problem. She didn't have the startup capital to make it happen. At that point, Prajwal had started earning a decent income and had managed to set some money aside, but it still wasn't enough. He turned to his parents for help, but they refused, skeptical that Anjana's idea could succeed. Once again, Ujwal stepped in. He believed in her vision and provided the funds she needed to get her business off the ground. Anjana threw herself into the project with incredible passion. She poured her heart into the salon, and it didn't take long before it started to pay off. The business became profitable rather quickly. Her success didn't go unnoticed. Her in-laws, who had once doubted her, now saw her in a whole new light. They began to recognize her as an independent, ambitious, and intelligent woman with a natural talent for business. Over time, the Mahat family's attitude toward Anjana changed. They started to value her opinions, show her genuine respect, and eventually accepted and embraced her as part of the family. For the first time, she felt a sense of peace and belonging. However, one thing still weighed on her. She hadn't reconnected with her own parents, and the silence between them remained unbroken. That's when Anjana came up with an idea. Her younger brother had just graduated from school, and she suggested he move to Lalitpur to attend one of the city's universities, where he would have far more opportunities than in their rural hometown. The plan was for him to live with Anjana and Prajwal in the Mahat family home, under her care and guidance. Prajwal's parents didn't object to the idea. In fact, they were open to welcoming the teenager into their household. To finalize everything, both families decided to meet in person. During this conversation, Anjana's parents saw firsthand that the Mahats were supportive and willing to provide a good environment for their son while he pursued his education. This meeting opened the door for reconciliation. Anjana was finally able to reconnect with her parents, and the misunderstandings and tension between them began to fade. From that point on, The two families stayed in close contact. Anjana and Prajwal made regular visits, and Anjana spoke with her mother almost daily. Her brother enrolled in a respected university, and the Mahat household welcomed him with warmth and kindness. As social media began to take off in Nepal, Anjana created several personal accounts across different platforms. The one that really stood out to her was TikTok. She began posting short videos showing the day-to-day life of her beauty salon, sharing skincare routines, product reviews, and tips on creating stylish looks. With her striking appearance, charisma, and confidence, Anjana quickly gained attention online. Her content started to go viral, and her follower count climbed into the tens of thousands. Viewers admired her radiant, almost Hollywood-like beauty, flooded her comment sections with compliments, and trusted her advice. Her online presence became an extension of her growing influence in both business and lifestyle. At one point, Anjana caught the attention of a modeling agency. They began offering her opportunities to participate in various photo shoots, promotional campaigns, and runway shows. For Anjana, it felt like a dream come true, something she had only fantasized about in her younger years. She seized every chance to put herself out there and quickly became a local celebrity. Confident and composed in front of the camera, Anjana embraced her new role. She experimented with a wide range of styles, including some daring and bold looks. Her modeling fees increased rapidly, and before long, her beauty salon started taking a back seat. Eventually, she closed the business altogether. Modeling had become her full-time career, and it was significantly more lucrative. Her popularity continued to soar, reaching far beyond the borders of Nepal. International modeling agencies began expressing interest in her work, offering attractive contracts and opportunities abroad. She and her husband started seriously considering a move overseas. Their top choice was Canada, and soon the couple began preparing for the transition. When they broke the news to their families, the reactions were calm but cautious. While neither set of parents was thrilled about the idea of them moving so far away, no one tried to stop them. In fact, both families offered their support in helping the couple pursue their dream. Back in 2018, Ujjwal had begun facing serious health complications following a prolonged illness. He started losing his hearing at a rapid pace, and by the end of the year, he was no longer able to work as a sound engineer. It was a devastating blow, but during this difficult time, Prajwal was his greatest support, helping him stay afloat emotionally. News of Prajwal's potential move to another country came as yet another emotional shock to Ujjwal. Adding fuel to the fire was Ujjwal's wife, Aishwarya. It's important to note that their marriage had been arranged. His parents had selected Aishwarya from a wealthy and influential family. She carried herself with pride and a sense of superiority. From the moment Anjana moved into the Mahat family home, Aishwarya took a strong dislike to her. She often made it clear that she believed Anjana didn't belong in their circle. Things eventually seemed to calm down, but when Anjana successfully launched her beauty salon and began to gain recognition, Aishwarya's jealousy began to show. The tension intensified when Anjana transitioned into modeling and started to thrive. She was young, beautiful, successful, and had built her career from the ground up. Even Anjana's in-laws, once skeptical, had grown to respect her deeply and considered her their favorite. Aishwarya, on the other hand, was consumed with resentment over Anjana's rising success. Fueled by bitterness, Aishwarya started spreading gossip and creating divisions within the family. She painted a damaging picture of Anjana, claiming that her modeling career was a cover for questionable behavior and alleged secret relationships. To back up her claims, she showed the in-laws photos of Anjana from swimsuit advertisements and insisted that such images were inappropriate for a married woman. Aishwarya had stirred up family drama on more than one occasion, but each time, Anjana's husband stood by her and managed to de-escalate the situation. Over time, the rest of the family grew tired of Aishwarya's provocations, and her emotional outbursts were no longer taken seriously. That's when she shifted her focus to her own husband, Ujjwal, trying to turn him against Anjana. The situation worsened dramatically when Ujjwal's illness forced him to stop working. Now, spending most of his time at home, he became a captive audience for Aishwarya's ongoing complaints. She continually painted Anjana in a negative light, accusing her of causing rifts within the family. When she learned that Anjana and Prajwal were preparing to move to Canada, her frustration boiled over. Blinded by envy and resentment, Aishwarya began telling Ujjwal that Anjana was tearing the family apart and planning to take Prajwal away for good. With his health failing and his younger brother being one of his few sources of emotional support, Ujjwal started to believe that he was being abandoned, left alone during the hardest time of his life. Anjana had previously shared with her parents how difficult things had become living under the same roof as Aishwarya. She explained that Aishwarya constantly tried to sabotage her and spread false rumors. Her mother advised her to stay calm, avoid reacting to hostility, and not to air the family's dirty laundry, insisting these were only temporary hardships. On May 9, 2019, around 4 p.m., the phone rang in the Lama household. Anjana's mother picked it up and heard the trembling voice of her in-law, who pleaded with her to come to the Mahat home immediately. The woman was crying and couldn't give clear answers. She just kept asking them to hurry. It was immediately clear that something terrible had happened. Although the distance between the two homes was just over 60 miles, a traffic accident on the highway caused massive delays. What should have taken about an hour ended up being a grueling 6-hour drive. By the time Anjana's parents arrived, the Mahat residence was surrounded by police cars and a growing crowd of onlookers, including neighbors and passers-by. Near the entrance, Anjana's younger brother sat with his back against the wall, his hands covering his face as he sobbed uncontrollably. It was clear that something irreversible had taken place, but the full scope was still unknown. One of the officers approached Anjana's father and asked him to come inside. Together, they walked up to a second-floor bedroom. What he saw next was so traumatic, so deeply disturbing, that it would haunt him for the rest of his life. Lying on the bed was the brutally disfigured body of his beloved daughter. The grief was overwhelming. His vision blurred by tears, his breath caught in his throat. He stumbled out of the house, barely able to process what he had just witnessed. His wife, seeing the agony on his face, instantly understood. Their daughter was gone. What had happened to Anjana wasn't just a crime, it was a calculated and brutal act. Her left hand had been severed entirely and lay on the floor. Her left leg, above the knee, had been almost completely detached with a single blow from a sharp weapon. Her head was barely connected to her body, and her face was so badly injured that it was nearly unrecognizable. Devastated by what had happened, Anjana's parents demanded that the police arrest every member of the Mahat household, accusing them of conspiracy and involvement in the crime. But what they heard next from the officers left them stunned. The person responsible had already confessed, was in custody, and was providing a full statement at the station. The person behind the act was Ujjwal, the same man who had once helped the young couple elope, and whom Anjana had trusted as both a brother figure and a close friend. It turned out that under constant pressure from his wife, Ujjwal had become convinced that Anjana was manipulative and greedy, determined to destroy the family and take Prajwal away to another country. With his declining health and lack of work, Ujjwal dwelled on these thoughts every day. Eventually, his resentment boiled over. He began to see Anjana's cheerful demeanor and her preparations to move abroad as deeply offensive, and hatred took hold. On the day the tragedy occurred, Prajwal, his father, and Aishwarya had all gone to work. Santosh and Anjana's younger brother were at school. At home were only Anjana, Ujjwal, and their mother, Pushpa, who wasn't feeling well and had gone to lie down. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Around noon, Anjana stepped outside to fill a container with water from the outdoor tap so she could water her beloved flowers near the house. She was in high spirits, humming a tune and dancing as she moved. From the balcony above, Ujjwal watched her intently, trying to decide how to carry out what he had already resolved to do. When Anjana came back inside, she went to her bedroom and lay down with her phone in hand. Meanwhile, Ujjwal was choosing his weapon. First, he picked up a large kitchen knife, but after handling it briefly, he decided it wasn't enough. He then went to the storage room where, among the tools, was a kukri, a large, curved, traditional Nepali blade used by Gurkha soldiers. Armed with the kukri, Ujjwal went upstairs and entered Anjana's room. She, still focused on her phone, casually asked what he needed. Instead of answering, he approached the bed. It wasn't until he raised the weapon that she realized something was terribly wrong. She instinctively raised her arm to shield herself, and the first blow severed her hand. Despite her screams and the horrific scene unfolding, Ujwal continued his attack, striking repeatedly. He didn't stop until he was sure there was no chance of survival. The final blow severed her head, leaving no doubt about the brutality of the act. The room was soaked in blood, as was Ujwal himself. Forensic experts later counted more than 15 wounds on her body, most of them fatal even on their own. After the violent attack, Ujwal went to his mother's bedroom and calmly told her what he had done. In complete shock, she decided her first priority was to protect her son. She immediately called her husband and asked him to come home right away. Together, they contacted the police. But when officers arrived, the couple tried to pretend they didn't know the victim. It may have sounded naive or even absurd at first, but given the condition of the remains, identifying the victim was nearly impossible. However, police quickly narrowed down who the body likely belonged to. They refused to move forward without formal identification and requested that Anjana's parents come in for the process. Despite the devastating injuries, her father immediately recognized his daughter. Suspicion initially fell on all members of the Mahat household. But Ujwal, realizing the legal danger his family faced, chose to confess. He claimed full responsibility, stating that he acted alone and that no one else in the home knew of his intentions. He gave a detailed account of what had happened, turned over the weapon used, and even handed in his blood-soaked clothes. In a disturbing twist, Ujwal had become so consumed by what he was doing that he failed to notice he had severed part of his own finger. It apparently happened during the final moments of the act, and he only realized the injury after stepping out of the room, trying to decide what to do next. Anjana's parents had long known about the toxic environment in her marital home. They were aware that Aishwarya, her brother-in-law's wife, held deep animosity toward her and had influenced others in the household against her. They believed she may have played a role in fueling Ujwal's anger and driving him to commit the crime. The Lama family demanded that Aishwarya also be arrested for incitement, but authorities declined. Ujwal continued to insist he acted alone and bore full responsibility. Ujwal's wealthy parents hired one of the top attorneys in the country, sparing no expense in hopes of reducing the consequences their son faced. They were willing to go to great lengths to protect their eldest, even if it meant interfering with the justice process. Prajwal, however, stood firmly with Anjana's grieving parents. He demanded the harshest penalty for his brother, refusing to accept what had happened. The betrayal was immense. This was the same man who had once supported his marriage, shown kindness to Anjana, and played a key role in their early happiness. Prajwal simply couldn't comprehend how someone so close to them could transform into someone capable of such cruelty. What hurt him most was seeing his parents rally behind the person responsible. Their loyalty to Ujwal and their efforts to shield him from justice felt like a betrayal of both their daughter-in-law and their surviving son. Feeling abandoned by his own family, Prajwal joined Anjana's parents in their fight for justice. The attorney hired by the Mahat family worked tirelessly to delay the proceedings and protect his client. But Ujwal remained firm in his original confession, afraid that any change in his story might draw his wife or parents into the case. It took 2 full years for a verdict to be reached. When the trial finally concluded, Ujwal was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the story didn't end there. Ujwal, along with his legal team, filed an appeal, this time with a new legal strategy, hoping for a different outcome. This time, the defense attorney claimed that his client was suffering from a psychological condition that had worsened due to his hearing loss and the emotional toll of losing his career. The court ordered a series of psychiatric evaluations to assess the validity of the claim. However, after thorough examination, mental health professionals concluded that Ujwal was mentally stable, fully aware of his actions, and capable of understanding their consequences. As a result, the original sentence was upheld, and Ujwal was sent to prison to serve his life sentence, without the possibility of parole. As for Prajwal, he remained in Nepal until the legal process was over. He stood by Anjana's grieving parents, offering them support and even testified in court against his own brother. Once the final verdict was delivered and justice had been served, Prajwal left the country. He flew to Canada, fulfilling the dream he and Anjana had once shared together. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.